I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this series, but I know I want to do significantly more Colorado Eagles content this year, so I'm going to give weekly videos on them a try. In the Eagles' first ever AHL week, they played 2 games against the Chicago Wolves and went 0-1-1. While they weren't able to pull off a win, they still did get a number of firsts in the AHL, including picking up their first overtime point. Game 1 was a very good game as well. For the majority of the game, I felt the Eagles were the better team and really should have beaten the Wolves. Through periods 1 and 2, they dominated the possession, and even in period 3, they seemed to get the better of them, even though they trailed for most of the game. Where they let themselves down was special teams. They failed to score on 6 power play opportunities and also gave up a goal while they were PKing in 5 chances. It would take more than half the game for the first goal to be scored, where Chicago would break the ice with Erik Brannstrom scoring the first ever goal against the Eagles. Luckily, the Eagles would respond quickly with their own first goal. Martin Kaut would spring AJ Greer up the ice, who would poke the puck forward and then use his good skating to draw a penalty and then just muscle his way through before slipping the puck into the net. A fun clip for the Eagles' first ever AHL goal. Unfortunately, the Wolves would retake the lead before the end of the second period, and the Eagles would trail by 1 to start the third. Despite the very patient pace of the final period, there was still that feeling of a bit of magic in the building, and the Eagles would eventually tie it up off of a nice tip in by Igor. That would get the Eagles to overtime, where Eagles' public enemy number 1, Erik Brannstrom, would once again put them out of their misery. Game 2 was far less interesting. The Eagles fell behind a minute into the game and just never seemed to catch back up. Chicago controlled play for the vast majority, and anytime the Eagles seemed like they were starting to get a little momentum, they would kill themselves by taking penalties. The good news in Game 2 is the PK worked well. They killed all 9 opportunities the Wolves had in the game, but they also continued to struggle on the power play of their own, going 0 for 7 there. The final for Game 2 would end up being 5-1, so it was never really very close, and there's not a ton you can take from it with all the special teams time, but we can take a look at the 1 goal the Eagles scored in that game. Kamenev starts the breakout with a nice move behind his net here before finding Agazino to start the breakout. Agazino then gains the blue line before finding Milosh as the third man in, who makes a very nice wrist shot to beat Lagasse. For the Eagles' first 2 AHL games, it was not bad. You would hope to get at least 1 win out of it, but a solid Game 1. Game 2, not your best, but there are things to build on. Some of the standouts for me, you have obviously AJ Greer scoring that incredible goal in Game 1, and then Nicholas Milosh, after being scratched in Game 1, was the best defenseman on the team in Game 2. You also had Kamenev, who I thought looked very solid and has been rewarded as such, being called up to the Avs, and I think there may actually be a chance he could stick up there. I also think on the defensive side that Sergei Boykov had a very good Game 1, and what he did play in Game 2 was solid as well until he got kicked out. Maybe what he did hitting Brannstrom was a penalty, but I don't think he deserved to get tossed out of the game. Overall, I thought the forward core looked solid, definitely in Game 1, and okay in Game 2, not as strong, but obviously that whole game had a lot of issues with it. And as previously mentioned, the PK has been very good for the Eagles. On the negative side, you have that offer in the power play column, and you also saw a lot of struggles for them with their defensemen beyond Milosh and Boykov. While a good PK is a good thing, staying out of the box in the first place would be significantly better. I also have a couple of question marks about some of the roster decisions that were made, but really, their usage in games I was fairly happy about. And obviously, pulling out a win would have been nice. Some other news and notes about the Eagles. I already mentioned Kamenev was called up to the Avs. We also saw Kanata get sent down to the Grizzlies. That means that Francouz and Martin will be your goalies going forward, and those are the 2 that were expected to be the goalies for the majority of this season. We also saw Turner Ottenbreit get sent down to Utah. He didn't manage to get in a game this week, so not a big impact there. So yeah, I guess that's that's going to wrap this video up. I kind of just wanted it to be a short recap of the Eagles' week, and we'll see how it develops going forward. Thank you for watching this weekly review. If you want a more in-depth take on the Eagles' first 2 games and some of the predictions we have for the team going forward, we did make a podcast about it that goes into significantly more detail. You can check that out. I'll post it down below. I'm Rudo3, and I really need to buy an Eagles jersey.